my channel. This is Tita Lavinia of Tita's of Pageantry, and for this episode, I will be giving you an episode that I know a lot of you have been waiting for. I will be ranking my favorites from the evening gown portion at the recently concluded 72nd Miss Universe edition. So please make sure you stick around, please subscribe to the channel, as well as hit that bell notification button for your weekly pageant fix. Hey guys, it is so good to be back. I have been wanting to have a chance to sit down, film content for you, and also have the time to edit my content. As I have mentioned in the past, it's been pretty busy for me also. Right after Miss Universe, I had to prepare Iona also for Miss Intercontinental, and then these past few days, Michelle Arceo's preparation is also in full swing. So I have been training some girls, I have been preparing pegs, I've been doing a lot of like social media jobs here and there. So I haven't been really focused on my YouTube content except on my live sesh every Sunday. But you know, it's always nice to sit down. It's always nice to do research, and it's always nice to have quiet time to really do all my editing. So as I've mentioned, one of the reasons as to why I'm lagging behind is also because I am in between changing equipment. So I am getting ready to replace whatever equipment I have in this like mini studio setup. So hopefully we will all be all set by next year. So yeah, I just did not want to let go of December without even tackling this, because I am really getting ready to give the spotlight to Miss Earth. I have been pretty invested this year at Miss Earth, but I just don't have the heart to do that without tackling the details of the evening gown, which I know a lot of you have been waiting for. So I gave myself a challenge. In fact, I've had this information for quite some time. I just wanted like a free time to really rank my favorites for you, because this edition of Miss Universe wasn't really as spectacular when it comes to like gown choices. And I think because we have been spoiled from the other pageants that we followed prior to Miss What Universe. I did, I challenged myself. I ranked these 10 girls for you, starting from my least favorite to my most favorite. And let me tell you, this edition has been rewarding. I'm sure you know why. Okay, so I'm going to start my countdown with my 10th spot. I will be giving this one to Miss Spain. Her name is Atenea Perez. So for those of you who have followed me in this channel, I know that I have been dropping hints every single year that I've been waiting for a Spanish queen. I've been waiting for a Thai queen. Atenea came close, but I honestly felt that she could have really pushed herself further so that she could have placed higher in the competition. But I suppose because of her gown choices, that was how just as far as she could get into the competition. So Atenea wore a Puerto Rican designer by the name of Jose Carlo. She switched her gown. She had a different gown for the finals and then a different gown also for the prelims. But for the finals, she wore an illusion mesh gown with what seemed like a seagrass pattern. It seemed to be rising from the hem up to the bodice. So the pattern continues at the bust. Now we've seen this make before. It's definitely a mesh dress, but yes, the bust itself had like a 3D figure of overlapping leaves. It was covering her bust. It starts out green and then it fades into a yellow color towards a yellow gold towards the upper part of the dress. It's a glittering gown. It's made from thousands of what seemed like flat back beading. So yeah, this is on my 10th spot because of three reasons. Number one, I feel like I've seen this type of gown before, and like what I mentioned earlier, there really wasn't anything fantastical about this year. A lot of the gowns that we've seen this year, we've seen before. So yeah, hers was one of those. Number two, because she's a Spanish queen, I honestly expected something more vibrant, something more intense, maybe an intense yellow or an intense paella orange or maybe an intense red. But yeah, we were left with a green that faded into yellow. And the number three reason why I placed this gown in my number 10 spot was honestly just because of carelessness. We saw her undergarments, it was showing, it was peeking through the mesh, and it would have been okay because we're used to like see-through mesh gowns. But yeah, the color of her underwear was blush pink, if I'm not mistaken. So it was just a contrast of like skin tone and colors, and I just thought that they could have had more care in preparing her overall look for the finals. My number 9 spot, I will give this one to Peru, Camila Escribens. Now, I would say that Miss Peru had one of the best physiques in the competition. It was a delight to see her in swim. It's also a delight to see her in evening gown, because you could really see all those womanly curves that we all aspire for. Now, she went for a Peruvian designer this time. The name is Jose Zafra of Zafra Couture. And what she wore was an asymmetrical cut dress with high embossed lines of turquoise, sapphire beads, and crystals. It has cutouts, it has a slit, it has this interesting undulating straps on one shoulder. So, this is a gown that has a lot of things going on. It's a gown that's interesting also because it did not shy away from her dangerous curves. It also showcased this without being too out, too open. For me, I like this gown because this is a proper pageant gown. But that is also the reason why I am placing this gown on my 9th spot, because it's not my favorite for the same reason. It's a pageant gown. So it was a good gown, but it was a pageant gown. I wish that they could have really pushed themselves a little further and maybe went for something that's more on the fashion side. Now let's move on to my 8th spot. I will be giving this to Miss Puerto Rico, Carla Gilfu. Now, Carla surprisingly chose a Thai designer to craft her evening wear, and she chose GL Garlat. GL Garlat is one of those Thai designers that has this very distinct style. It's very MGI, and I say this because he has provided a number of gowns for MGI over the years, and even the Filipino girls have been recipients of gowns from GL Garlat. So if you really want high bling, if you want impact, you go to these design places. So yes, what she wore was a corset style dress. It was a spine cut dress that features a neck piece. It's embellished with crystals and beads, as well as extra long fringes that hang on the shoulders. So the gown, by the way, is adorned with crystals. It has sequins, it has glass beads, and it's in a gradation of blue and violet. Apparently, these are Carla's favorite colors. And the decision to go for these colors was because they wanted to be inspired by the floral arrangement of blue and violet dendrobium orchids. That was made by Carla's mom for the reception dinner at her village in Patillas. This was where Carla won the national. So it was really part of the table arrangement. So they took the colors from the floral arrangement, from the table arrangement, from that victory party. And yeah, how do I feel about this gown? Honestly, I felt that she looked better in cooler tone metals. I saw her wore a different gown for the prelim. She wore like a silver gown for the prelims. I hope that she would continue on that silver or like that gunmetal gray coloring. I think that it would make more sense with her skin tone. I also felt that the gown itself was just too busy. It had way too many things going on. She has a gorgeous body, but somehow cutting her from the neck with the shoulder detail with her hair, I just felt that the proportions were just a bit off, that it didn't quite feature Carla in her statuesque self. And yeah, this would have been like the best time to go full on Latina with the hair, but she put her hair up, and I thought that yeah, it could have been like more pageant for her. So but other than that, I thought that it was a really bold choice to go for ultraviolet as opposed to like the usual nudes and golds and silvers. But she would have really looked amazing in silver, I think. My number 7 spot, I will be giving this to Miss El Salvador, who honestly went really far in this competition. Her name is Isabella Garcia Manzo. Now, organization, they chose Colombian designer Gustavo Arango. Now, what Isabella wore was a white Grecian goddess style gown. It was asymmetric, it had cutouts. The dress itself were held by embellished golden straps, so it had a very Versace feel to it. It featured a gorgeous drape detail. It was trimmed with gold lines and glass beads and sequins. But honestly, this would have been like more on the fashion forward type of gown. This resonated with me because it didn't really seem pageant patty. But I don't know, there was just something a little off with the fit for me. I felt that the drape work just did not give her shape. It felt really heavy handed with the drape work. It wasn't quite as fine. So I don't know if there's like a backstory to that. I don't know if they argued or anything. I'm just saying that I really waited for these two folks to talk positively about the gown that Isabella wore for the finals because I had been waiting for weeks and no, just cricket sounds for both of them. My number six spot, I will be giving this to Australia's Mariah Wilson. Now, Mariah Wilson also did really far in the competition. And just like with the other representatives of Miss Universe Australia in recent years, they chose Melbourne based bridal couture house uh, Alain Lecal. So this one is a custom-made strapless mermaid dress. It has a sweetheart neckline. It's made with a corset with layers and layers of blush tulle to create that nude illusion. Now, the dress itself is actually based of a hand-beaded gown that they released for their most recent bridal collection. It's called the Eleonora wedding dress, and the Eleonora dress is adorned by crystals. It's adorned with butterflies and stars, and it was employed. Well, the techniques, the beadwork techniques, was also employed towards Mariah's gown, but in a different shade. So, what I like about this gown is it's light. It's really fairy-like. It's a proper princess gown. But the thing is, it's also really very reminiscent of Renee Ayres from 2012. It's very reminiscent of the gown that she wore in 2012. So can you imagine 2012, 2023, years in between, and they're pretty much stuck with the same look. So I don't know. The Australians, they always go towards something that's more on the bridal side. So I hope that in the coming years that they'd be like bolder in their choices because I am honestly seeing a pattern here. Number five for me, my fifth spot, I will be giving this to the grandest of the grand winner. I will be giving this, of course, to Shanice Palacios of the Nicaragua, the very first Miss Universe for Nicaragua. Now, I'm not gonna even go into the controversies and like what her status is in her country. I'm just really gonna focus on her Miss Universe stint, particularly at her evening gown. And this was because it was a wow dress that she wore. Not my cup of tea, but definitely a wow dress. And the reason for this was because they chose Venezuelan designer Nidal Nuayed. And this gown is a white fit and flare gown. It's heavily embellished at the bust and shoulders. So if you see the bust and shoulder details, it really does have the signature of Nidal Nuayed and all of the gowns that he did in the past. Now, the beadwork, it's made from opalescent stones. It has pearls, it has crystal beads, white and clear sequins. So you know that the color palette is more on the milky side, more on the opal side, more on that white crystal side. So yeah, the pièce de résistance of this whole look is an opera cape that's attached to the back and it's dramatically wrapped. It's a vibrant shade of blue, and what really brought a lot of people to like really support this gown is because it represents the colors of Nicaragua. It also represents the colors of the flag of neighboring El Salvador. So you could just imagine the fan base of this gown. I thought that she looked like a proper 90s pageant girl. I mean, it had that 90s look to it. It had that 90s feel to it, but I absolutely loved it on her because it's a very visual representation of a Miss Universe. It has volume, it had beadwork, and yeah, it was just a really good choice for her. Again, not my cup of tea, because I feel like the whole silhouette and just the treatment is just a little on the dated side, very 90s for me, but it worked for her anyway. So yeah, cool. My number fourth spot, I will be giving this to Camila Avila, of course, of Colombia. No, they chose Colombian-based designer John Lexel. Although honestly, I thought that this was the work of the Alfredo Barraza, but apparently not. This is by John Lexel. The Colombians honestly have mastered the art of flat back beading. I think that they're the only country that I know who does this every year. Now, for her gown, it's a fit and flare gown with a sweetheart neckline. It is fully embellished, like embellished to the max. Honestly, we've had so many embellished gowns for the 72nd edition, but Colombia's gown was the most straightforward, crystallized gown in the bunch for me. It is so beautiful if you come to look at it closely, but sadly, it is also unremarkable. And this is because Colombia has been doing this type of look since 2015. And a lot of pageant fans are even calling this a starter kit because they pretty much look the same. They're always in a metallic gown that's a little difficult to grasp, whether it's a shade of rose gold or maybe gold or silver. It's always along those lines. It's always incorporating flat back beads or like high bead work, but it's always very plain. It doesn't have a lot of patterns. So these are like wearable jewelry, but mostly custom jewelry because it's just so blingy, it's blinding. But even the hair and makeup, it honestly just looks like a starter kit. So even if Camila ended up looking absolutely beautiful at the finals, yeah, she ended up looking unremarkable because it's the same thing over and over. My third place is going to be for Thailand, Antonia Porcel. Now, you have to follow me with this. So the finals gown of Antonia was made by Myriad Grand Mode. And this is a Thai label. They really specialize in highly embellished gowns. If you want the mesh gowns and if you want it done beautifully, you go to these places. They call the gowns Stars in the Universe. So they've had several names for the gowns that she wore, and it was always alluding to the universe or anything celestial. So Antonia switches between these two design houses, like I mentioned. For the nationals, um, she wore for the nationals and the prelims. It was by Myriad Grand Mode, but the final gown for her Miss Universe Thailand stint was by Valentier Atelier. However, for Miss Universe, she decides to wear the prelims gown for Valentier Atelier and then the finals gown for Myriad. Now, what does this even mean? Because this might even be confusing to you. What I'm just saying is that she had just the most beautiful gowns from these two design houses, and somehow all her looks ends up looking like a capsule collection. Don't get me wrong, I love the make, I love the pattern, I love how delicate these gowns are, but you honestly could not tell them apart if you're not really into nitpicking the details. So for her finals gown, it's a nude tulle base that's covered in silver crystals and arranged like stars in the night sky. It is said that her gown is the nudist out of all the nude gowns that were featured in this edition. And it's also because of the shade of her undergarment. I mean, if you're going to do a mesh gown, if you're going to do an illusion gown, note to Miss Spain and the organization, you should look to how the Thais do it because they pretty much mastered matching the skin tone with the undergarment and the actual make of the gown. So that was one of the reasons why it continues to stand out because it just really seemed like it was floating wearable jewelry. So it's so delicate. It was um, done nicely. And let me tell you, there are fabrics out in the market that are already beaded. All the designers have to do is just cut the fabrics into shape and then make a dress out of it. But with Antonia's gown, it seemed really different. It seemed like they beaded the whole thing from scratch. So It's a beautiful gown. I placed her in my third spot because it is really an absolutely stunning gown. But again, it wasn't memorable because if you line up all of the gowns that she has worn from Miss Universe Thailand up until the finals of Miss Universe, it's pretty much the same looking. My number two spot, I will give this to the lovely Venezuelan Diana Silva. Now, Diana wore a Venezuelan designer by the name of Richard Ramirez Castro, and she wore a shimmery gown that features cascading layers of crystal fringe layered over a nude sequin base. It's a striking design with a large keyhole detail that perfectly frames Diana, and it is said to be inspired by Venezuela's majestic Angel Falls. Now, Diana did not change her gown from prelims to finals, but the significant change was that she ditched the cape, which I thought really worked. I don't know what is it with these Venezuelans. I don't know why they are so attached to the cape. Like they would always have that extra drama. So I'm glad that she ditched it. Maybe her hair and makeup could have looked a lot fresher, but if it's just based on the gown, this was again a proper pageant gown. It had all the bling and the backstory, and it fit her really nicely. And so, my number one spot, and I think this is pretty obvious, I guess, because it it's a gown that really caters to the taste of those who are really more into fashion rather than those who are into pageantry. And I am, of course, talking about Michelle D of the Philippines and her amazing gown by Filipino designer Mark Bumgarner. I have been waiting to film this content for you because I have been wanting to talk about this amazing frock that honestly should be given its space in a museum if ever they will think of gathering all of the iconic clothes from Philippine pageantry and then put them up in the museum. I think that this is a really, really good candidate for an exhibit. Now, the gown, of course, pays homage to the 106 living legend Apo Wang-od, the last of the traditional tattoo artists from her tribe. This masterpiece exemplifies the harmonious marriage of fashion and indigenous workmanship. And it is said that when it was pitched to Michelle, the symbolisms resonated with her. She was talking about bravery, beauty, and identity, which, of course, are the very core of what she could have said if she had had the chance to hold that mic and really perform well at the final Q&A. But yeah, they didn't give that to her. Anyway, what I really like about this dress is that, of course, it is a symbol of timeless beauty. And of course, now would be a really good time to introduce Apo Wang Od again to the rest of the world, to the rest of the universe, because she was already given that recognition by Vogue Philippines. So this is just honestly keeping up with the momentum. Now, I like this gown because I have been hinting for quite some time that the gown is still going to have that like, sparkle effect, but it's not going to be like super shimmery, it's not going to be super blingy. So yes, there were beadwork all over, and I like how tedious they were when it came to the research work because the whole thing has been done before. I'll talk more about it later on. But yes, I like that there was accuracy in the beadwork. You could see that there were materials showing how um, detailed they were with their research work, with the placement of the beads and what figures are supposed to appear as part of the pattern. So it's a very intricate work, and they had to be very careful with it because of cultural reasons. So they couldn't just come up with a really fashion tattoo inspired gown. It had to be accurate at some level. So I like that this had impact. It absolutely showed our culture to its best. And it's fashion forward. It felt like second skin. It had the tribal feel too. I know that a lot of you were polarized by the black skirt that really held everything together, but I did not mind it at all. It would have been nice if it was like fully tattooed or like fully beaded, but I like the idea of the wraparound skirt because that's a fashion interpretation of how they would do it in the north. So yeah, I like the gown because it was graphic in its details. You didn't have to zoom closer one of the things that we would always talk about when we would talk about gowns is that you'd have to zoom closer, or like the details are lost. Now, in this case, the details were like pronounced. They were there, all right. So yeah, it wasn't lost on stage at all. And it was out. It was proud, and it was distinctly Filipino. And I like that the treatment was just so respectable, and it just gave us, even pageant fans from the Philippines, it gave us dignity. My only critique is that yes, they could have softened her hair because she had the same hair from the prelims, and that was one of the feedback of the pageant fans, to really soften her hair a little bit. And I was really honestly hoping for that pop of red lip, because I know that Apo Wang Od just very fond of like painting her lips vibrant red. So that would have been like a really good thing. But overall, this was an absolutely amazing gown. It was an absolutely amazing creation. I've been vocal in wanting to have Apo Wang Od as uh, an inspiration maybe for a national costume. So to have the Apo Wang Od inspiration be translated into an evening gown, and a beautiful evening gown at that, that was just treated with so much dignity, so much respect, and so much art and culture, that is definitely a go. That's definitely one for the books for me. And like what I mentioned before, I have high respect for this gown because the treatment has been done before. Very early on in 1995, Ino Soto had an amazing fashion collection that he showed in Paris. In fact, one of the uh, bodysuits, which was a Pintados inspired bodysuit, which was worn by supermodels like Joyce Orenia, is now placed in a museum. Representative Yeda Romualdez also wore a version of it in 1996. So, and then there have been others in the past that has worn a pintados or a tattoo inspired garment. So we had the likes of Maricar Balagtas, that wasn't received as warmly because they took creative license in crafting the whole look. Of course, you had the likes of Kylie Versosa during Binibining Pilipinas. That was the work of Rahul Laurel, but it was in gold. And then very recently, Catriona Gray also wore a Pintados version, but this was for her national costume. But for us to be very distinct and go up north to Buscalan and, tackle tattoo art from the north instead of the traditional pintadas from the southern provinces. I think that was a really, really good move for the Philippine team. So kudos to Michelle, kudos to Mark Bumgarner, and kudos to the rest of the creative team, because you may be number one in a lot of the pageant pages or fashion pages, but yeah, you're definitely number one in my list. So I hope that you enjoy this. This is a little lengthy, but that's fine because I don't usually put out episodes out there. And please wait, because I cannot wait to also film some content for you on the ladies at Miss Earth. So do wait for this. So this wraps up our whole Miss Universe experience. Congratulations, Michelle D. Yeah, you could have. I'm not gonna even go there because we know the sentiment. So for now, thank you guys, and goodbye.